2 years into President Bola Tinubu's administration, Nigeria stands at a crossroads, caught between bold reforms and worsening hardship. Tinubu's swift removal of fuel subsidies and the unification of the foreign exchange rate earned applause from institutions like the IMF. Yet, these policies have unleashed a wave of inflation, factory shutdowns, and mass layoffs. According to the World Bank, over 129 million Nigerians now live below the poverty line. Insecurity remains a major concern. Despite official reassurances, violent attacks persist. Renewed Boko Haram activity, rampant banditry, and frequent kidnappings continue to overwhelm security forces. Recent killings in Benue Plateau and Ondo State point to ongoing security lapses. Economically, there are signs of growth, with select sectors reporting increased profit. But for most Nigerians, life is harder than ever. Now, for an analysis of the first 2 years of President Bola Tinubu's tenure, political strategist Charles Oludare now joins us. Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Now, on May 29, 2023, the two major pronouncements President Tinubu made as soon as he stepped into office were that fuel subsidy is now gone, and also he unified the exchange rate. How do you think these two pronouncements have impacted the economy and Nigerians generally?
Thanks a lot, for that question. If we look at it, we have to try to be as objective as possible. In my own opinion, those two policies have led to the betterment of the Nigerian state. So Nigeria as a country is in a better state now than it was before Bola Tinubu came in. And that is evident in, what you said in terms of like us being able to pay our bills, our governors having more resources to develop and invest in their citizens. However, the Nigerians are worse off. And this is not me saying it. This is the word of the administration. When they tell you that you are going to feel temporary pain, you cannot be better off while you are feeling pain. While this pain is necessary, we have to be able to, in my own opinion, admit to the mere fact. And I feel like you mentioned the fact that, there's hardship and there's inflation. That is right. But in my own opinion, this is not totally caused by the two policies that the presidents announced. And, I would try to make a few analysis of those two policies and talk about what I think is causing it. And in my own opinion, if we look at it, I like to use a bad experience to make example to make a good point, because I feel that should suffice. So I'll use one bad example and assume that there's no stealing of the fuel or anything. There's no, those subsidies does not exist. The average Nigerian does not use as much fuel as the rich men, like people like President Bola Tinubu himself or Dangote. They don't fly in private jet and all. So when you subsidize, well, for every liter that you subsidized, it is them that they use it. So before a poor man uses 1 liter, they have used over 1,000, even maybe 10,000 liters. So that subsidy, let's assume there is no problem with it, was either to benefiting the rich at the expense of the money that is needed to invest in the poor's education and road. Now, you also look at the unification of exchange rates. And I will use a bad example again, which is the issue of, like the Dangote refinery right now. Dangote said about last year that he was only able to access about 2.7 billion from the CBN governor. Now, if 2.7 million Nigerians needed $1,000 each, which is about the same amount, we would have been able to buy with the naira that Dangote bought is 2.7, we would have been able to buy $1 billion less than Dangote was able to buy, because we will not get access to this, low exchange rate. We'll get the 750. So, and I know everybody agrees that they don't want Nigerian states at the expense of the people, giving people like Dangote money, right? So that extortion of the Nigerian Commonwealth was what President Tinubu stopped by unifying the exchange rate. However, before that extortion, there was also exploitation of the Nigerian market, which is what I think is, responsible for the hardship that people are facing right now, because there was too high import duty prior to the unification of exchange rates, and at the time it made sense.
In there, before you go too far, talking about the unification of the exchange rate, there is statistics out there that even the government had to pump in a lot of dollars to stabilize the naira because of the plunging due to the unification of the, the exchange rate at the official window and also at the, the black market. Do you think that that could have been avoided? Because, of course, that has also affected our debt profile. As of December 2024, our debt profile stood at 144.6 trillion naira. That's approximately $94.2 billion. And that's, of course, an increase of 48.58% increase from the 97.34 trillion naira that it was as at the end of 2023. Do you think that it could have maybe be avoided?
No. But if you look at the way you said it, that we pumped money to try to stabilize the naira. I mean, I am from the economic school of thought that we don't even really need that. But if we, despite the floating of the exchange rate, still needed to pump that amount of money, imagine what we would have needed to pump if we didn't float the exchange rate. What used to happen, there's this thing called the possible trinity, that if you peg your exchange rate, it is either you restrict capital flow or you just lose control of your currency and your central bank cannot set interest rate or anything. Now, what we were either doing during the Emefiele was to restrict capital flow. And if you are restricting people from bringing money into your country, nobody will come and invest where they know they can't take it out. So what is really making this naira fall is just the demand, which was hitherto being unmet. And when we look at even this arbitrage, it's not just people like the business people that are doing arbitrage. Even someone like me, and I'll tell you my own legal arbitrage. If I wanted to buy a plane ticket to come to Nigeria right now, if it is $1,000, I will not buy it from here. I will send naira to my cousin, and maybe it's like $650. That's what I will send to him. And then he will buy that same ticket, the same flight for me, which will be equal to $1,000 at that positivity rate. So I will keep $650. That is also arbitrage, even though it is all legal. So those are the things that needed to go, because that was something that even me was exploiting. So the unification has to happen. But like I was saying, the hardship is caused by import duty. And there's an economist, Maynard Keynes, that said it is the one that started the Keynesian economic principles, that import duty is substituted devaluation. If something was costing $1 and you put 100% import duty at it, if the dollar was 750, it would be 1,005. And if you devalue your currency from 750 to 1,005, it will still be also 1,005. But what is happening in Nigeria is that we devalued, then we kept the import duty. So it now became impossible for Nigerians to afford food, basic food. If you look at it, it's been in the news that the price of rice has come down from about 100,000 naira to about 65 to 50 to 65,000 naira now. Now, what caused that was because President Tinubu in August 2024, just before the hunger protest, announced that he was going to allow importation of food, but I felt like the president put 2 poison pills in it, which was that he limited it for only 6 months, and then he said it was only people who have already invested in rice mills in Nigeria. If he had allowed everybody to be able to go to just Cotonou there and buy rice at 45,000 naira, as opposed to the 9,000 naira that was being sold, if we divide 250 million Nigerians to 50 million families, and we assume one family with one bag of rice in a day, the President Tinubu would have saved Nigeria. The President Tinubu would have saved Nigeria $800 million in every 2 months. That is equal to the same amount of money of loan that they borrowed from IMF to do direct transfer. So we don't really need to borrow that money if we allow them to buy cheap food, and they will have the extra money to use to invest in every other thing. You cannot want to double your economy and get a $1 trillion economy in 10 years, and then you put trade barrier, because that's what import duty is. It is even something that you might not be thinking about, but even in cars, you see cars having accidents every day, trailers fall down, bomb villages. But since 2014, we've put punitive, restrictive import duty on cars. So people cannot bring in trailers. So everybody's lives in Nigeria right now is at risk, because a vehicle is a public safety situation. So if you cannot change your car and you are driving a car with failed brake, you are putting everybody, both drivers and children that are crossing the road, at risk. It is the same thing with cement too. And thank God, Boa already said it like last week in an interview he gave at Aso Rock, that the reason the cement is so expensive right now is because of the import duty. So that means there is no need for that 55% import duty that was either to preventing imports. And also, low exchange rate is also good for our exports, which is part of the aspect that you see that has also benefited. So I feel like we need to address that trade policy so that Nigerian people can get a respite, because we cannot go into
Exactly,
2027
because
and still be talking temporary pain.
yes, because many of these things that you've talked about are still on paper. There are so many of them that have not yet trickled down to the average Nigerian. And while we're still talking about food, President Tinubu declared a state of emergency on food security twice during he has declared it twice during his 2 years in office. He declared it first in July 2023 and then in April this year. Do you think that that has made any difference? Because we know that farmers are still complaining, groaning under the hardship, especially when it comes to the fact that they are not able to go to their farms because of the insecurity in the north. We heard of the resurgence in Mate, that's in Borno State. Do you think that the declaration had any impact whatsoever in food security in the country?
Maybe a performative impact, in my own opinion. It's not the only declaration that I also have problems with. The president has also given the military officers marching orders many times to go and defeat insecurity. It is not about, the marching order or the declaration. If you want to declare a national emergency on food, you have to understand that it will take you at least 10 to 20 years to be able to secure your food infrastructure. Because one of the major problems we have in Nigeria with food is infrastructure. We think about tomatoes. Tomatoes need to be carried in refrigerated trucks along long distance. We don't have those things there. We don't have good roads for the farmers to bring their goods outside. Those are the things that are affecting. And then when you now look at affecting our agricultural production, then when you now look at it and juxtapose it with security, the insecurity that is preventing people from going to their farms, you have to restructure the Nigerian security system and allow every local government to have their own police. 85% of these police officers or police forces in the United States are from the local government. So Dallas PPP will have their own, Fort Worth will have their own, even though they are like just 20 minutes apart. Because when you give people control over their security, just the same way you control safe. So, and if you want to restructure police, governors need to be able to pay for it. So you have to also restructure the economy so that the governors can make their own money and truly be autonomous, and the local governments will truly be autonomous and be able to pay those people. So until you address the real problem of it, you can declare marching order from now to the end of time. Boko Haram will be the ones marching through our villages. You can declare national emergency on food production from now to the end of time. Well, we are just not going to be able to produce it. No country has been able to double their food production overnight. And you have to think of the fact that Nigerians' food demand is very low right now. So whatever we are saying is not, whatever demand that is causing this scarcity is not what it ought to be. If I call my cousin, he will not tell me, uncle, buy me Nike shoe. He will say, Ebin Pami. Those are things that really pain me. So we need to definitely do what we need to do. We are going to grow food, but that will be in the long term. But if we wait for the long term, in the long term, we are all dead. So we need to allow importation right now. If the president allows people to cross across Idiroko to Cotonou and bring rice, the person selling rice on the road to your house will be able to go and buy maybe 5 bags of rice and sell it in Derika and Congos, and people will have cheaper food.
But wouldn't that
so we have to do
sorry to butt in, Charles, wouldn't that contradict the grow what we eat and eat what we grow mantra of this administration, especially when you look at the fact that President Tinubu, during his Independence Day speech, talked about giving farmers input and ensuring that we have enough, we grow enough to feed the nation and not having to import. Even during the past administration, we've seen all of those moves. But during President Tinubu's administration, we've seen him talk about the fact that we need to now invest more in our farmers. You think perhaps that's some lip service?
No, it's not like it's lip service. It's not just going to jive with reality. President Tinubu was not the first person that started grow what we eat. It started under President Obasanjo as a military general Obasanjo when he started Operation Feed the Nation. And I was having a conversation with my mother, which when she was in university coincided with when Obasanjo was the military ruler. And she said, well, we used to eat our quarter chicken in the calves and everything. And then before we left university, we just didn't have that anymore. Well, that was also about the time that they also stopped importation. We can eat, at least our currency is very low right now. So if we Nigerians are not the only market for food, there's international market for food too. So if you keep protecting farmers, you are not going to give them the conditions that they need to be competitive with the global food markets. So it is not the fact that, I mean, if President Tinubu could have done it in the last 2 years, he is well-meaning and is good intentioned. So he would have done it. There's no, snap or switch that you can press and food will just be there. It takes time. We don't need all Nigerian youths to go out to go to the farm. No, that is false thinking. In the United States, less than 1% of the country grow food for everybody, and they are the greatest exporter of food all over the world because we mechanized everything. So it is not going to work. We are going to grow it in the long term, but in the long term, we are all dead. We need to eat food now.
All right.
We cannot keep giving people wait.
You are saying we should allow the food come in right now so that we don't die before we're able to provide what we need to eat. But let's talk about the fact that now the ruling party and even some opposition party members have endorsed the president for re-election in 2027. What impact do you see that having, especially looking at the trajectory these 2 years in office?
Well, I am confident that President Tinubu is going to win the re-election. I am a supporter. I am actually President Tinubu's supporter first, and I'm an APC member, right? So I support President Tinubu very fervently. I know he is going to win, but I believe PDP and the opposition have done Nigerians a lot of disservice. I am someone who believes in being put under pressure so that you can perform at your optimal best. But when we have the opposition that is in disarray and they don't even have the temerity, the humility to admit to the fault that they are having in their what's it called, it is just sad. So there's no real pressure right now. That's why you see all the opposition governors who should be banding together coming into APC because there is no alternative there. Let us look at what this other coalition is doing. But I know from what I have gotten anecdotal that a lot of Nigerians are complaining, but they are not just going to vote for the opposition just because the opposition just exists. So I believe that President Tinubu is going to be is going to win the election. I'm not worried about President Tinubu. Just anecdotally also, from what I see on social media, what I'm worried about personally is the military, because the most revered leader in Africa right now, due to his social media propaganda, is Traore in Burkina Faso. I can, from my conversation with the Nigerian youth, God forbid, because a lot of them, you have to understand that the average Nigerian age is 17 years old, less than 18. Abacha died 26 years ago. So majority of Nigerians don't remember the military, right? I was very aware then, so I remembered. So if the military should, God forbid, take over right now, the Nigerian youth, from what I have seen, they will celebrate it. And that is the one that I'm worried about. And that is why I keep advocating that President Tinubu needs to end protectionism on food. I said this in 5 days after the president got inaugurated.
Indeed, there's still so much to be done. And he has 2 more years, of course, before the 2027 elections to, implement some of the policies and the promises he made to Nigerians before taking office. Thank you so much for your time, political strategist Charles Oludare.